Welcome to the Young CPA Success Show. If you're a young accounting professional, this podcast is your ultimate guide to navigating your early career. Join us as we share valuable insights, expert advice, and practical tips to help you kickstart your path to success and excel in the accounting industry. Let's embark on this exciting accounting journey together.
And I still remember the first song I downloaded from LimeWire was Alien Ant Farm's Smooth Criminal. And
I'm good call out. Tony Hawk inspired?
Yeah. No, every great CD started from a Tony Hawk Pro Skater mixtape. But
I love
20 years later, that song still rocks. It's
way better.
Anyways, I had a kick out of that because I hadn't thought about LimeWire in forever. I was like, kids today just don't understand the struggles. They just go to Spotify or whatever. They get whatever songs they want. Whenever they want it, downloaded directly on its thing.
Don't even know what burning a CD even means. Like
the irony is that like most of Spotify's product team and also a lot of their developers came from LimeWire when LimeWire got sued to death. Like they went to Spotify, and LimeWire could have become Spotify in a different world, but
then I wouldn't be here.
You know, I like, I love what LimeWire started. I like that the artists are getting paid from Spotify, although admittedly probably not what they're, worth, but they at least have figured out how to monetize that a little bit. But, it's interesting because really Spotify is LimeWire without the, weird computer viruses that occasionally would come with LimeWire from time to time. Not saying I know that from personal experience.
Of course. Not saying I know anything about that. So I was just a CFO. But yeah, LimeWire, that's a whole topic of discussion, including little known fact that LimeWire did have a music store that was paying artists. We were trying, we were trying to become, to become, but
good story. This is like when I try to defend community adjusted EBITDA and Adam Newman. This is the same thing when people are like, no.
I can tell this is going to be a tough crowd.
What a reference. Wow. Okay. So a couple things to unpack there. Number one,
sorry. Are we already live? Are we already?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
So this is the episode.
We're doing
Jesse.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
Okay.
What right. We've
I'll
noticed.
Stop eating my pretzels here.
No, just eat your pretzel. It's fine. It's all good. One thing we've noticed is like we tried to do like more formal introductions, and we're like, man, we were having better conversations like before the show ever started. So let's just dive into it, and we'll just find a natural place to start. Yeah. So it's all good.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to do it.
There's a couple things I love about that because that era of like early internet, I don't think like. Is that ever going to be replicated? It will at some point, but like it just felt like the Wild West from like 1998 to 2005.
Oh yeah. And then there was even another, I think sometimes internet call it 2.0 or like social media 1.0, like the YouTube evolution of dance video and like Charlie Bit My Finger and like all that kind of stuff. Kids don't remember that.
Charlie
Bit My Finger, extended, I feel like into 2010.
Salad Fingers.
Yeah.
Salad Fingers.
Candy Mountain. Yeah, that stuff.
Oh my God.
And then you said the Wild West, and like I was instantly transported back to the Oregon Trail.
There you go.
All the nostalgia.
Elementary school.
That's even further back.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's way further back. The Oregon Trail. Wow.
We're talking the computer
I guess you guys are probably all too young to remember Carmen Sandiego.
Oh,
no.
Absolutely.
Oh no.
I had the CDs.
I am. What is that?
I mean, oh yeah, it's basically an early detective game, like a whodunit. Okay. My memory is of the Apple IIe version of that game, if you can believe it. And I remember the sounds of when you finally apprehend wow. Yeah, computer games. What about Civilization? Anybody remember that?
I still play Civilization.
Really?
Yeah. I think I'm on like what? Civ 5 or something like that. I've got the phone app for it. It's okay. And then I had another guy who will occasionally play he built a gaming PC just to play Civ.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Loves it.
What about Ages of Empires? Have you heard of that one?
Oh, please.
Yeah. Wow. I'm talking to the right people here.
Yeah. No, this is our crowd.
That's great.
And it's.
Ba-ba! That's the sound when you go to war. You remember that?
Who would I play as? What was the one? I'm trying to remember how I would start that, but every time I was like, the key to this game is you've got to get the right build from the beginning. And I can't remember what empire I do, but I'd always pick the same one.
Yeah, sometimes with Civilization, if I didn't get if I wasn't dealt the cards that I would just start a new game and wait till I had the right, strengths or raw, natural resources or whatever. Probably not how Sid Meier intended it.
But. Yeah, it's a coward's way out. Sounds like.
Yeah, fair enough.
So did y'all ever think you would be doing accounting over the internet? Because that's really what QuickBooks Online is we're just doing accounting on the internet.
I didn't really think about where I was going to be doing accounting. I kind of was just like, oh shit, I have to do it. Oh wait, sorry. Can we curse on this? My bad.
It is the Young CPA Success Show. So
I mean
how young?
Joey and I say everything.
So yes or so
yes.
No? I'm not sure.
So yes.
Oh, okay.
Well, Joey and I say everything.
Not like we're not talking 10-year-old CPAs. We're talking okay.
The 12-year-olds.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Early
PG-13 at least. Okay.
Yeah. Maybe that's how we do it, Rox. And I've got to have like the PG-13 one where it's like you get one F-bomb, but you have to make it count.
Yeah, you have to. Yes, that's how
I'll make it count. I like a good challenge.
I did not think we would. I used QuickBooks Desktop when I started my career, and the keyboard shortcuts are way better, and the cloud accounting infrastructure was just still, the ecosystem was still in its infancy. I remember pitching the idea for Bill.com to my boss at the time, who I thought was a very smart guy. And he said, yeah, I'm not really too interested. And so I thought, well, he's a smart guy and he's not too interested. I guess it's not a good idea. I think Bill.com probably started around then and I kicked myself. But, at the time, desktop it's just so powerful. You could be so productive as a power user. And I think what's happened is the power of the cloud and third-party integrations has eclipsed the productivity gains because it's gone from having to use QuickBooks really, really efficiently as a human user to architecting a system that integrates all of these applications. Yeah. And that's become the greater skill than being a QuickBooks operator.
Joey and I were talking about this before y'all hopped on in terms of I think back earlier in my career and I too started on QuickBooks Desktop and thought that was a great tool and it was great, but it was also what I was trained to know. It's what I walked into. And I feel like if I had adapted more of a how can I do this better mindset earlier in my career, things would have looked a lot differently for me, especially being an advocate for change in the industry. So I think just speaking to the younger generation too is it's really easy to walk into somewhere and just do something because that's how it's always been done and just accept and settle for that being what it is. But I think there's so much room, especially in the world we live in today, to take that mindset of how can I make this better?
I'm so sorry. What is your name? The names are not showing up on my screen. I've heard Joey now, but I haven't heard your name.
Hannah. Yes.
Hannah.
This guy sucks. Yes. Get him out of here.
I know. I'm so sorry. Hannah, what you said about now I
curse, but at least I know your name.
Thank you.
The Young CPA
that.
show. It's the Young CPA show, right? What you just said about sort of being a process taker. I think it's so relevant for your listeners because when I think about my own evolution, starting at the bottom, doing AP data entry, doing booking monthly close, right? I think there's something about the early in your career mindset, and maybe this is just late adolescence, but I remember feeling less inclined to accept the process that was imposed on me. I understood the outputs. I got to get these bills in. I got to book these accruals. I got to, review the numbers. But when I knew, hey, this is not how I want to do it, there's a defiance that goes with youth that makes you want to say, no, I'm just not doing it that way. I'll get you what you want, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it this way because I want to save myself time. And it's something you can only really, if I hadn't done that at that part of my career, I don't know if I would have later had the confidence to build FinOptimal, which is predicated on, no. There's a better way. Let's do it the better way.
But you had a unique situation where you started at a startup, when you start your career at a big 4 or mid-sized firm or whatever, and there's a process there, you're getting assigned tasks. They take this gigantic project and carve out one tiny, tiny little bit and say, do these steps over and over and over again. And you don't get the leeway to really break outside of that. Even as someone who was trying to do it, it was like, all right, well, do it both ways and then prove to us that the other way is better. And then we'll run it up the chain for 5 months and maybe you can do something a little bit different. Right. So you had a very unique perspective. I also think that you were before like the time where people were really breaking out, right? Like I feel like now there's a lot more young accountants who are embracing this mentality and people are talking about this more. I mean, we're on this show talking about it, but I feel like when you started your career, you were really, a rebel. It's probably the first and only time someone will call Jesse a rebel, but I'll call him a rebel.
Can you believe that Tom, like that we work together? Listen to how he talks to me. Like, is this usual on your podcast? I mean,
well,
have you ever had somebody get fired on your show? Has that ever happened? That someone
there's the first time
the show with a job?
I've been fired and rehired on podcasts more than the OpenAI guy. I'm not afraid. What are you going to do?
We're going to talk. I was just talking to a client about that like 10 minutes ago. Not 10 minutes. It was an hour or two ago, but it was like, man, what a weird situation that was. That's a podcast on its own. The thing, and Jesse, you kind of mentioned this earlier too. I think this is important, is you had a similar situation to me where when I was at a job, I was hired as a controller at 30 for an organization here in Albuquerque that was like very established and all these things. And like, I immediately started going and be like, okay, we can do this better. We can do this better. We can do this better. And they were like, no, we don't want to do any of these things. I'm like, so why'd you hire a 30-year-old? Like, why did you hire the young dude to come in here and do stuff? Like, if you wanted me to just do all, like, I didn't want to come here to just do things the old way. I want to come here and do things the better way. So I think, Tom, you caught a little bit of this when you were popping into the green room. We were talking about how at that same place, we were, trying to kind of finagle together some systems. And we had this big ERP system like most organizations do, right? They think, I need the industry-specific ERP system. I used to call it the Cadillac that we drive 25 miles an hour down the street that had all the bells and whistles, and we just never drove it more than 25 miles an hour. And I remember trying to make some process improvements that, like, you learn in the CPA exam, you learn in the CMA exam, you learn in all the things in school about how to, like, find the best tool for, like, that one thing and just maximize the heck out of it until it's, like, where it needs to be. And they just looked at me like I was stupid. And that's when I was like, okay, it's time for me to go. Like, this has been great, but my pursuits need to lie elsewhere.
Yeah. The most surprising thing you said there is that when you were 30, I can't even believe you're 30. You guys look so young. So good for you. Both of you. You guys look great.
Was this like last year?
Yeah, I was going to say, what's going on here?
Mid-30s going on here.
Well, my knees are 36, if that makes any difference there.
That's fair. No, I mean, yeah.
That role that you're talking about. Sorry to interrupt, Tom. Sorry, not sorry.
It's all right.
It's what you're talking about, Joey, reminds me that what we like to think of what we do at FinOptimal is that part of your job that you talked about, which is the making things more efficient, often by tool selection, whether it's within the monolith of a giant ERP, right, selecting add-ons, or whether it's something more modular like what I think QuickBooks has managed to create. But you're architecting a solution. You're architecting a system, and that role of the architect is something that we treasure and elevate at FinOptimal. That's something that I viewed as key to my success as an individual contributor, and I think it's rewarding in the way that creative professions can be rewarding. There's a highly technical element, but there's also, there's an opportunity to build something unique and beautiful and time-saving and productive. And that's what attracts us to it.
So real quick, so just because we're 14 minutes into the podcast, and I wouldn't take the first 6 minutes of this back for anything because that was the most fun I've had on a podcast ever. But I do want to talk a little bit about FinOptimal, because we've mentioned it. It's your background is beautiful. We see it. What I want to know is, before we get too far into this and people are like, Joey, you've got these guys on from FinOptimal. I don't even know what FinOptimal is. Tell us about it so that we can figure out, more about what you guys do, how you do it. And I think the part that's more important to us is like why you do it.
Okay. Great. Yes, that's definitely the key. I'll try to start from the end, and the why is that that architectural role, that sort of you might call it the intersection of accounting and engineering in this context, is, a skill that I think that I personally excel at, that our company is excelling at, and that I think really adds value in terms of time saved and errors omitted, right? In accounting, right? It's a very process-oriented approach to accounting. I started FinOptimal when I had a day job as an accounting firm. I started taking private clients on the side, all QuickBooks Online. And this was at a time when the API, QuickBooks' application programmer interface, which is sort of the third-party developer connection point, right? How you make your app talk to QuickBooks, you use the API. It was still not in its infancy, but it was not complete. You couldn't book deposits, for example. You couldn't book transfers. You couldn't read transfers or deposits, right? Those are important entries in QuickBooks, and you kind of had to work around it with journal entries, as an example. This was 2000.
I'm going to guess 18 or 19, right?
15.
A little earlier. Right. By 18 or 19,
okay.
By 18 or 19, it was very, very full featured. By 18 or 19, we probably had $500,000 of revenue. And we were, I had a few contractors helping me out. I think I hired our first full-time employee who had been a contractor for several years in 2019. And then I went full-time with it when we had $1 million of revenue in 2021, late 2021.
And it's interesting because 2015 wasn't that long ago. Like, I remember sitting in meetings with clients in 2016, and they were talking about QuickBooks Online. And I was like, hey, it's not there yet. Desktop was still the play in 2016 because of the limitations you're talking about. We pushed a lot of people to Xero. I had a firm completely re-engineer their entire accounting department to move to Xero versus QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop in 2016.
8 years, not that. I mean, Jesse might be done with this backstory in the next 8 years, so we might be able to. The podcast might be able to release in 2031. But go ahead, Jesse. This is the Lord of the Rings extended edition.
I'm fast forward. I'm going to try to
then,
just talk.
This is the director's cut.
I'm not going to say less. I'm just going to talk faster.
This is what our
he wants me to make sure I get all the talking points out there, which I will. Okay, so our secret was software that automates these processes. I could talk so much more about why we decided to go with QuickBooks Online instead of the other things, but that's a whole nother podcast. So our secret to success has been the technology that at first I built entirely by myself, right? Some of the products that you can see on our website that helped us do the work faster and cheaper with respect to our competitors. And that's how you win business, right? In the last 2 years, we've made a decision. Okay, we're going to try to productize these things that we're using internally, build a website, a graphical user interface, a GUI, and sell it to accounting firms so that they can benefit from some of the productivity improvements that we've made internally, right? So in the last 2 years, and we just launched the Accruer in June, and we have more products that we've been using internally for a long time that we're going to start making available to accounting firms so that they can benefit from that. How did I do, Tom? Did I get there?
Yeah, it was like,
is the podcast
you ever
already
see the
over?
Meme of like where the horse is like drawn like really, really, really detailed, and then a scribble at the end.
Yeah,
kind of what we just had there.
Okay.
I'm a fan of the
good.
scribble in this context.
Good. And I started with the why, so I don't need to go back to that.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the why is important there too, because I think that's, when I think about, and this is a little backstory that the audience has heard, but for Jesse and Tom, you're on, just for your knowledge. I come from a family of accountants. Like, I didn't know anything else to do with my life at 20 years old. I was like, oh, I guess I'll be an accountant because mom and dad were both accountants. My brother's an accountant. My wife's an accountant. My cousin's an accountant. Like, we're all just accountants, right? And when I think back to my folks, like, they had me doing QuickBooks Desktop at like 16 because they're like, you just need to know how to do this. You need to know how to use it. And I still have conversations with my mom, who just retired about a year ago from her accounting career, and she's still like, yeah, I can't figure out QuickBooks Online. I don't love it. I don't like it. But I'll tell you, like, that is, and it's probably because people have figured out what you figured out, which is that they've made that so user friendly that you can sort of pick and choose which stuff you want. Like, that's one of the best parts of Hannah and Mai's job when we're not recording podcasts, is like getting in with a client and saying like, okay, tell me your 5 biggest problems. Well, we're getting killed in AP. It's taking too much time to do payroll. This is a problem. This is a problem. And Hannah's mind just sitting there in the background. We're like, okay, we're going to get Bill.com queued up. Your credit cards stink? Great. Divvy, Bill also, same company now. Divvy or Ramp or one of these other solutions that we work with.
Yep.
Payroll's not great. Okay, Gusto, get it in there, get it started, all those types of things. And it does feel like I almost feel a little bit like a shopper going to a grocery store and saying like, okay, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then we're going to create this accounting recipe that's just going to work for you.
Recipe. I like that.
That's awesome. You asked the why, and we literally just recorded a whole video series about why we built it for each of our apps. Jesse refuses to do things manually, like absolutely refuses to do it. And, you know, I'm lucky because I'm here that he decided to do this with accounting. I think the way that his brain works, he would have engineered something no matter what field that he went into. But I think the level of understanding of accounting and Jesse's ability to break it down into a technical way while still appreciating the accounting nuances that the outputs must reflect is why we've been able to build those tools. And like when I was even interviewing Jesse about why did we build this? Did you ever do it manually? Nope, never did it manually. Like he did it manually in his first job, but FinOptimal, we've never done it manually. We've never done accruals or allocations or report wrangling or transaction creation in bulk or mass edits to QuickBooks. Never done them manually because there's just a refusal to waste time when you could be investing that time in a better way, right? And that is literally what we've built this company around, that mentality.
I think there's space for that too. Kind of going back to what you said about speaking to like the young accountant who might be like pigeonholed into like doing this one specific task this way because it just needs to be a churn of getting the data out. Like there's still room and space for that, but it takes some intentional mindset work of like, there's a better way. Like, I'm not just going to do this because somebody said that this is how I need to do it. Like, there's a better way. Like, I can be a catalyst for that in this organization, but that can be a scary place to be in for a young, fresh face, especially in a big organization and stepping up to that. So like, do y'all have any advice for that person who like might feel intimidated by like, hey, like I want to step in and I want to own this from an AI, from an analytics, from, you know, whatever that may be. Do you have any advice for like how they could implement that in their role?
For sure. I'll go first just because I came from a big organization in the beginning. I think you come in bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, I'm ready to make a difference. And then you realize, okay, what I was taught in school isn't directly applicable right now. There's way more nuance. There's way more complexity than I'm familiar with. And you kind of just get assigned tasks and it breaks you down. Like you kind of lose that excitement of like, I'm going to change the world. And you have to make sure like that flame doesn't get extinguished. In a big organization, for me, it was all about going above and beyond, right? Like I am going to invest, I'm going to not give 100%, I'm going to give 150%. I'm going to spend extra time after work or outside of work, whatever the case is, to prove that, hey, I can do more than this and this will work. Trust me, here you go. And the second I did that, it put me on the map of the partners and the MDs at my firm. We're like, this guy cares and this is different. We need to get him involved in more stuff. But just asking for an opportunity isn't always enough. Like seize the opportunity or just make it for yourself and put something in front of them that's undeniably better. And then you're going to get those chances time and time again. And you're going to get the recognition for it. But you have to be willing to, you know, not just clock in, clock out and wait for the chance that somebody's going to give you a cool project. Make the cool project.
You know, I think that's great. I want to build on that a little. Certainly, I think, Tom, you talked about when you say not just clock in and clock out.
Yeah.
There's two. I want to talk about that risk because there's an element of risk taking and there's an entrepreneurial impetus behind undertaking those improvements. And I see those in two dimensional. The first is what I call capital time, right? Like if you see a process that's inefficient, you have to invest a lot of time to try different ways to tackle the problem and use different tools, right? And take different approaches. And you hope that like other capital assets, you enjoy the product over a long period of time. You save yourself much time later, but you invest much more time. Well, hopefully less time now for much more time later. But you have to be prepared to make that investment. And it's probably going to take more of your job at first. Like you're going to have to do more work. And the second thing is, and this is where, there's no substitute for experience. When I tackle a project that's automation driven, I often know whether or not it will work or can be done fundamentally. And I can decide whether to undertake it and not undertake it. But I only know that because I've undertaken a significant portion of just eventually unsuccessful projects, right? Like, no, this is here. I only know in retrospect, this is why that won't work. But entrepreneurs, hopelessly optimistic, if you think you have a twinge of that hopeless optimism, then invest the capital time, take that risk, and ultimately you will build something better than what was there before.
Well, I love that you're kind of leaning into the entrepreneurial aspect of work, because I think about, and I try not to get too tied into like generalities about generations and stuff, because I mean, Lord knows the millennials.
Because everybody knows y'all's generation's terrible.
Horrible. We're the worst. We've killed everything and eat avocados. The thing that I
hate avocados.
Avocados are elite. Get out of here. When I think about most of the Gen Z folks that I work with, like as a whole, that generation is the most entrepreneurial generation of people I think we've ever seen. Because for the bulk of their life, all you've needed to be running a business is your phone. If you can get a video and you can do something that people are going to watch, you can create your own business. You can create your own future. And I think that's something that historically accounting firms have struggled to get their people involved with. To your point about, I remember my internship when I started right out of college in 2012. Like I was working on client stuff, but I had friends who like all they knew how to do was calculate DPAD, which was an obscure tax thing that you did for 6 years. And then in 2018, it went away and it hasn't come back since. So like, if that was like what you were basing your experience on, that is now worthless 6 years after the fact. But it's incumbent upon folks like you, folks like us, folks like Summit and Anders, where we're trying to be like on the forefront of that, to enable that type of entrepreneurial spirit to like not just get like shoved to the side, like, okay, great, thanks kid, go work on the project, but more like, hey, the kid's got something that he thinks is going to work better. Let's see if it does work. And let's, actively mentor this individual to your point, Jesse, kind of bring in some of that real world experience of, hey, it might not work as you're currently doing it because I did this and it didn't work, but maybe if you tweak this one thing, it does work for you. Like CPA firms are really struggling to do that, except for a select few who are doing it really well.
Joey, what you're saying about the phone, that's an idea I haven't heard before. I don't know if I would have called, Gen Z the most entrepreneurial generation.
What would you have called them?
I mean, I'll skip that point for a second, but the idea, one thing that occurs to me when thinking about the phone is that you can get feedback much more. Like in business school, they teach you, if you're going to start a business, like don't write 100-page business plan, get a customer and a product, an MVP, minimally viable product, and get it out to the customer, get feedback, get another customer, right? And the phone shortens the life cycle of that feedback loop considerably if you know how to use it. If you make use of social media, if you have connections that, right? Like that communication loop is so much tighter. And I think that, legacy accounting firms have struggled to ride that wave, in part because, the phone is new. I like to think that I am part of the generation during which the phone, you've probably heard this before. Everything that comes out is amazing to the kid who did not have personal computing until, 8th or 9th grade. Right.
Yeah.
And so,
I like to joke. I was part of the generation that still had to have a .edu to get a Facebook. Like there's, the kids.
At least
that
you
I
had a
to,
Facebook, man.
Right. Yeah. I no longer have a Facebook. Thanks, Grandma. But, when I think about like all of this stuff, like social media, like I think back to when I was in college in 2008, like nobody had an iPhone. And thank God, because, who knows what would have been recorded of my time in the fraternity house. None of that stuff happened on video. And this is all great and well and good. But, it's the feedback thing is so interesting because I think about, and I do a lot of work with kids here in Albuquerque. I work with kids in the high school and stuff like that here where I went to school. And there are kids down there who will be doing stuff on Instagram, and they'll know, like, in the first 5 hours of putting up a post, whether like this is either going to be a good post and I'm going to leave it up, or it's not, and I'm just going to pivot. I'm just going to take it down because it's not getting the feedback I wanted. I didn't get the number of likes I thought I should. I didn't get the feedback here, didn't get the feedback there. And in some ways that's harmful. But to your point about business, you know, I think about someone like Mr. Beast who will sit there and say, I know that I'm going to invest literally $15 million in a YouTube video, and I have enough feedback to know that that thing's going to make me 40. Yeah, and he just knows.
I think the Gen Z being entrepreneurial is, there's a balance, right? Of like if you think about an accounting firm, I often feel like the partners and the leaders have like an oversimplified view of automation and like technology and advancement. Like, we want to improve these 3 KPIs. How many automations does it take? It's like, that's not how it.
4 takes 4.
I've had this conversation, so this is real. Like, I promised 5 bots this year. Like, why 5? That's my
KPI. My bonus if 5.
I promise. I was like, I can make 5. Or only one's going to really be valuable, but sure. But like, there's a collaborative aspect amongst all levels that needs to happen. And I even go through this sometimes when we're talking about software with other firms, like a partner's like, yeah, we don't really do that much of that. I'm like, when's the last time you asked the senior or staff accountant how much time they spend on it? Like, I know you don't have the timesheets in front of you. You don't understand that pain. And there's a balance of like, hey, we want to be more efficient. We want automation, right? Let's brainstorm ideas. Like, think about things that are repetitive, right? That have structured data, that have business rules, right? If this, then that, and that are very, very monotonous, right? And now let's just throw out ideas, get everybody involved, and then go, okay, these are the 3 we want to tackle because I'm the senior leader and I can understand like the ROI of this and how many resources I'm allocating, but I never would have thought of these ideas if I didn't involve the younger generation. Right. But it's not, the younger generation also needs to understand, the younger accountants, you know, understand what the process is now so that they can actually have an opinion on why it needs to change. It's just the communication chain amongst all levels, I think, is so important, because like Jesse said, if you go down a path of just trying to like throw technology at stuff, you're going to pick the wrong project. You're going to pick the wrong thing. You're going to overinvest time in automation for something that's not really conducive to it. So, you know, I think
this answer truly is getting a little long.
This answer is getting long?
Yeah.
Dude, you wrote the book on long answers. Jesse's fired.
Look, the one thing that I'm really glad that you covered is the generations, right? Like, I think in the collaboration, like, this is where I want to try to bring it home to the artistic architectural element here. Like, if I think about our senior team at FinOptimal, right? I view my collaboration with Tom and our growth story. And this is something that Anders and Summit seem to be getting right?
We're trying.
Right. We're all trying.
Yeah,
like, there's a lot of different, we're all throwing stuff at the wall. It's about experimentation, but I like to think of these John and Paul stories. You guys know what I'm talking about when I say John and Paul, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Jesse's more of a Ringo, but
I was gonna say this sounds like a Beatles reference.
Yeah, it is.
Oh,
it is. Okay. Right. Like Tom and me have a John and
Is
Paul.
Tom Yoko?
There is
I'm
a Yoko.
Paul for sure. I'm Paul. I'm Paul.
I can live with that. I'm definitely a little. I mean, I did used to be bespectacled, but you know, our head of engineering. I like to think that our tech stack, that he and I have a John and Paul type thing. You know, Eric, we've built these products together that I just couldn't have built. Like that collaboration between the newer and the older generations, but also between people with different skill sets. Right? Innovation happens. It happens incrementally at the intersection of 2 disciplines, and that's what we're trying to bring together here.
Well, I love on your website where you ask the question, like, what if accountants coded? Which I feel like that can happen, and like that's such a unicorn thing. Like, if most, like, I think about myself trying to do anything creative where it's like, if I'm designing something, this is a true story. I designed a little bookshelf that I made. It's not little, it's a rather large bookshelf, but I designed it on Excel. Because like I didn't know like how to be artistic enough to do this outside of Excel. And I'm like, that's what I think about when I think about accountants who code, where it's gonna be like everything's gonna be neat and tidy and things are gonna be in there and it's just gonna look like an Excel document at the end of the day. But
look, I want to tell you, Joey, that our stack, our software is really like the products are based on a package within Python called Pandas.
Okay.
And basically what Pandas does is create a concept of tables, basically Excel spreadsheets that you can manipulate in code. So the same way, I assume you used VLOOKUP, you used SUMIFs, maybe even offset, indirect if you really go crazy.
You're giving me way too much credit.
I mean, plus and minus for sure.
I was imagining just like colored cells. And like
that's what it was.
He drew a picture in Excel.
Well, I did manipulate things to like size it correctly so that I could make sure it fit the space and all those things. So there was a little bit of stuff there, but
like, can we agree that you were proud of it at the end?
Oh, 100%. It was
right. Like
was
this
beautiful.
Is what you like when you're training the next person, you're like, look at this thing, and their eyes are glazing over or they're trying to figure out what to do with it. But you're like, look, I made your job easy for you. Here, I'm giving you the keys. Right. And that's like the creative drive behind, like, that's a creative, productive drive. That's what we're trying to instill in the people that are implementing our product. They're building our products and implementing our systems.
So you said that about coding, and I saw that as well. And I remember being in like one of my very first freshman classes and being in college and being there with a girl who something got brought up about JavaScript. Is that a coding platform? Yeah. Like
it's the front end language.
Yeah. So like she knew it. And I was just so impressed. I was like, wow, like she learned that in high school. And now I'm like, man, how cool would it have been if I'd have had at least some basis of knowledge to that in high school, maybe even my freshman year of college, how different this role could have been for me.
Hannah, that's so funny. Because JavaScript is sorry, Tom, did you want to say something?
No, it's fine.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm just going to okay.
Keep talking. This is going to have the lowest
JavaScript
ever.
Like JavaScript is the single biggest hole in my skill set. Like our head of engineering is a gifted front-end developer. And, I think the collaborations are often defined by what you bring to the table and what you don't. And the things that you're missing, right, become the things that, people shaped holes, right, like fit into. And that's a great way to figure out what you need to build whatever is you want. Like, I think that's great. To not know something. I'm not going to go learn JavaScript. That's not the best use of my time. I've gone by that point in my career. That's in the 20s when you can be like, oh, I could build a front end interface for this, and they could just click a button and do it. That's when you learn JavaScript, not when you have 4 kids.
Accounting and finance is we're power users of Excel compared to many other professions, and there is coding in theory in Excel, like depending on how complex your formulas get. So like I feel like our brains are already wired to take the step towards coding, even low code or like no code. So it's not too late. You can definitely dabble if you want to.
I mean, I can absolutely attest to those 3 kids. Like they took a lot of brain cells from me. So in terms of the time, there's that piece to it. But if I'm like talking to somebody who maybe is early in college, maybe even that's listening to this, in terms of taking some of those classes, and I had worked with a controller who her minor was in something to do with IT, and she taught me a ton in Excel. She taught me how to effectively use like SUMIF formulas and VLOOKUPs and XLOOKUPs. And like that has been so incredibly valuable for me. And like, it was so simple. It was like a day of working with her. And she was like, yeah, I had a professor who like really encouraged me to minor in this like tech IT, something to do with that. And she was like, it has been exceptionally valuable for me to put my time and energy there. So like I would say to somebody who's like early in their college career to explore that option. Absolutely.
Yeah. Even explore it just as a hobby or a path. Like, it doesn't have to be tied to your major. Like MySpace, you guys remember MySpace layouts?
Oh yes.
That's how I
with your top friends where you have to put your top friends on there.
Yes. There was
aggressive with this.
Yeah, if you wanted to do like a custom 12 or like hide 4 or like play a song that didn't exist or do any sort of layout, that was all HTML. And that's when I was like, all right, I want mine to look different. And that was my first exposure to any sort of coding language. It was like 7th grade trying to make a cool MySpace page. So it just it can come from anywhere.
I think
it's like music.
Should we have a page, Tom? Should we have a FinOptimal MySpace page?
You should recreate the Tom from MySpace avatar, like the
it was Tom.
That could be
Tom was the guy. That's right.
That should be your LinkedIn profile picture. Yeah,
he was on my top 5 because I just didn't have that many friends. Top 8, top 5.
I'm not going to touch that one.
Okay, all right.
So you've been getting beat up too hard on this episode.
Speaking of college, I have because I was thinking back, Tom, something you said made me think back to like my time in college, and I was thinking about like, I don't want to call it useless stuff, but like the things they teach you in college that like just aren't applicable to anything we do at all. And then I went to like tax memos. Like I had an entire class where you had to like write memos with like the citation on the left, and I was like, thinking back in close to 15 years of accounting, I've literally never written a tax memo or a memo to the file ever.
How about use the T account?
No, I mean, well, that's not true. I've done a couple of things to like show people, but like never practically.
Okay.
If I talk about any of this, we're going to pull my license. Though. I can't do it. 3 letters are getting ripped up.
Like if you're like a young kid, or not even I mean, they're all young compared to us now, but like a college kid, and they're like, these guys sound cool. Like I want to do some practical things to like either create some automation, stuff like that. Like what would be a better, like if we could redesign college to create skills that are like useful to 2030, as opposed to what we're teaching now, which was useful in like 2015. What sort of things should we be doing in college to like get kids ready to like come into the world and be like fully functioning adults?
I mean, I think where I learned the best was any sort of like,
gonna have different answers here. This is good. We're going to be way different. We're going to be way different.
I'll go first so that people don't shut off the episode while you're talking. Okay. I think more projects and stuff. Honestly, I think like accounting is the language of business. It's cliche. Everybody says it. It's true. Your business is kind of just an idea. You know, it's your passion. It's your hobby. It's your idea. For everyone else, it's a financial package. How do you measure it? Like that's the accounting part of it, right? Maybe that's not that interesting to you, but like any sort of like create a business, market it, right? How would you go get financing? How do you account for it? Like those sorts of like longer form projects or case studies where you can use all of those skills in a that you learn from a business school in practice is I think how you learn the most and get the most excited. Because just like going to class and like reading a book and then doing homework is the worst way to learn. I mean, creating case studies would be cool. Also a flipped classroom. Did you guys ever have a flipped classroom? Do you know what that is? It was, so basically you were supposed to do the reading before class and then you come to class and do the homework together. So it's like you're doing the problems in class. So you're not getting lectured at. It's very collaborative and community-based. That was the most accounting I've ever learned in a class. Everything else was memorizing a textbook, going in and regurgitating it. And then
not thinking about it again until you have to study for the CPA exam.
And then sitting down for the CPA and going, is revenue a debit or a credit? Crap. But that really happened. So Jesse, go ahead. What's your idea?
Well, wait, first I want to hear the answer. Is it a debit or a credit?
The only reason I know it's a credit is because of the accruer. So,
okay. All right, good. My work here is done. I was going to say, I think we need more common preparation in classics, like reading the classics, some technical math, science, statistics. I think that the way we talk, the way we write, could use an upgrade. I just think that we need a larger body of common work. And I know this has come under fire in the last 20, 30 years, but a sort of core curriculum so that you've just got more stories in common that you can refer to when you think about human nature. I have my feeling is that generates more productive, collaborative people. And you can't help people figure out what they want. You just have to let them chip away at what they don't want over time. I'm a big believer in the marble statue model of building a career where you start with a block and, you chip away stuff over time. And eventually, hopefully earlier in your career, but sometimes not, you wind up with something where you've chipped away all the stuff that's not you, all the subjects, all the skills, all the people. And, by the end, you kind of, this is who I am. Because we're all still figuring it out.
It's a really great point, because when I talk to the high school kids, that's the number one thing I tell them is like, look, you've got to be able to communicate. Like, if you can't communicate effectively in whatever you're doing, you're not going to be successful. And I think about, Hannah's going to laugh because it's a well-known crutch within my consulting, which is that I've got kind of one pitch, and that's the sports fastball. Like, I can give sports references, I can make sports analogies, I can do, matter. It doesn't matter the sport. You want me to talk about pool, I will talk about pool. But if someone doesn't know sports, like, I don't have any other pitches in the arsenal. I can't do a John and Paul. I can't make a music reference. I can't make a pop culture reference. I can't, and it's all about connections. So that's an area of my growth where I've got to keep up my repertoire.
Spend more time on the internet.
It's so funny. I have to say, like, I will take a minute, even though he's acting a a petulant. I'm going to take a minute and credit Tom.
Petulant. Don't read these old books he's talking about. Then you're going to pull out SAT words.
Oh yeah, SAT words. I'm a big believer in that. Like, just learn some freaking words, kids. But in terms of, like, Tom is probably the best person that I know at making analogy and metaphor and simile are just such powerful tools when you're trying to have a difficult conversation, right? And there's some sports analogy, I really just need you to sit on the bench, or right. Let's how do we hit this one out of the park? These are there. I'm sure there's some good ones that I don't know, but the ability to bring to bear these ideas, it can crystallize a concept that's otherwise not so accessible. And I think you get that from being well-read or being on the internet a lot. I think you get that from being well-rounded and communicative and involved. So that's
100%.
All of this is just making me think about how much I'd pay to be back in college.
I think about that like once a month.
I can't go back.
Youth is wasted on the young, man.
That's the number one piece of advice to give to kids is, like, you are never going to have as much free time as you have right now. It doesn't get any, you have, it never gets better. Yeah. You just have less and less free time. So enjoy it. Play all the Call of Duty you want. Just do it.
I was going to say,
it goes away.
Yeah, it goes away. Yeah.
Tom, I thought you were going to make an analogy as a follow-up. I gave you.
No, I wasn't. I
thought I gave you a layup there.
You were being nice. I thought you were going to keep being nice, but it was like a short-lived being nice. But it's fine. I'll take it. Yeah. I'll take what I can get. I think those types of, people understand what they understand, and when you can put something in a context that they'll get more quickly, right? You're just going to have a more effective conversation with that person. I feel like I definitely use sports analogies more than anything else, though. I'll be like, don't play them out of position, right? Best player available. I
told a client this morning, like, you got to treat this like a basketball game. You're fouling at the end of the game because we just got to keep the game going as long as we can.
I like
Extend it, because you never know what's going to happen. Just keep extending as much as you can.
I like that.
If you foul them enough, you get into the bonus.
Exactly. Yeah. Or I know. If anybody's a Texas A&M fan, they always say down there, hey, the Aggies never lose. We just run out of time.
I like that.
And that's where it's like, you got to keep extending it as much as you can.
I like that.
I love to make fun of the Aggies. So I don't know if anybody's a Texas A&M fan on the podcast, but
no.
We'll tell some Aggie jokes next time.
Yeah, it's a hobby, a passion of mine. Well, guys, this has been like 48 of the fastest minutes of my podcast life. And we usually like to end with something lighthearted, which we've totally already done. But I think we should
more lighthearted.
Yeah, we should double down on the fun stuff. So we've learned a lot about your history. We've learned a lot about the company. What's something about yourselves, like, what's your most proud fact about yourself that nobody knows that you're willing to share? Like, is there like a secret skill, a secret hobby that you're like super proud of?
God. I mean, Jesse, you have cooler stuff than me.
I knew you were going to say that to try to make me go first.
Yours is actually cooler. You should go first.
You think you know what I'm going to say?
I don't know. You go first. Right. Well, then I'll say something extra nice about you.
The coolest thing about me that nobody knows?
I put you on the spot. I'm sorry. This was an unplanned
I'm going to go.
question.
All right. I'll go with
dude, come on. You played the Billy Joel video. What are you doing?
Billy Joel. Fine. I don't know. I did play an original song for Billy Joel in college that I wrote about him in front of 1,200 people at Irvine Auditorium at Penn. And that was definitely, I'm sorry to say, the highlight of my musical career. but I don't get to talk much about music these days, but I'm a piano player and a songwriter. And, maybe once my kids are a little bit older and, hopefully get a sweet equity payout with FinOptimal, I'll spend a little more time getting back to my real dream, which is to be a rock star.
So you've created the family.
I'm not going to fail. I just might run out of time.
Exactly.
There
exactly.
you go.
I don't have
that's a good stat though. That's tough to beat.
It's very hard to beat.
Sorry, the best part of that story that I should tell is at the end, he said, "What's your last name?" Rubenfeld. Oh, so you might not need an accountant. That's what Billy Joel said to me before I knew I was going to become an accountant. So I suppose I should give him some share of my chosen profession.
I can't follow that up.
Then why'd you make me go first, man?
Because I was hoping that we would just talk about you, and then I don't have anything. I feel like I'm just like a basic person that lives in Brooklyn. Like I just have all of these hobbies that you'd be like, oh, of course you do that. Like, of course
you're gonna come in and be like, I can dunk.
Like no, you look like stand up.
No, stand up. Yeah, I've done stand up. I've brew beer. Like
there you go.
Like you just do all the basic Brooklyn stuff. I feel like I'm a walking caricature of what people think of when they think about Brooklyn. So yeah.
So true or false? And I say this.
Wait, y'all aren't going to tell us yours?
Oh, we will. I need to ask Tom this follow up though. True or false?
Okay. Yeah.
Brooklyn brisket is better than Texas brisket because that is something I've heard from people.
Dude, hometown barbecue.
Very carefully about this because we're going to vote on whether you should keep your job after this.
Brooklyn hometown barbecue in Brooklyn is phenomenal. I haven't had enough Texas brisket to weigh in, but I've seen the pictures of the 3 slices of brisket on a little piece of brown paper. And everyone makes fun of it.
With one pickle in the corner.
Yes. Hometown barbecue is amazing. I'll stand by that. It's phenomenal. So I'm not going to say one way or another. Hometown barbecue is like the number one, barbecue spot like in New York for sure. And it definitely
next time you're here, we'll go to the pit room and you can decide. Fair,
but yeah. So I don't know. That's not a good answer. I'm not that passionate about my barbecue. So.
That's fair. That's whenever I think about Brooklyn, I'm like, man, I saw this Eater article like 5 years ago about how they're like, this is the best barbecue in America, and the whole state of Texas was like, whoa,
it's good.
Slow your roll.
It's very
slow
good.
Your roll.
All right, Joey, your turn.
Oh man, you're gonna make me go. I was hoping.
I am. Oh yes, I am.
Okay. So my hidden talent is I do a lot of cooking. So I do most of the cooking for the family. So like. The thing that I'm really doing a lot of now is like making all the pizza doughs and everything from scratch. Sweet. And all the sauces from scratch. Cause we redid the backyard here at the house. Cause you've been in a place for 6 years. It's like, well, I guess we'll stay. So we put a little uni pizza oven back there.
Going? Nice.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So, having to play around with.
But,
so you know how to do.
Let's say why you cook though.
Oh yeah, we'll do why. So when I was in college, I convinced a professor at K-State to let me get course credit for going overseas to Italy to go to culinary school for a month and a half and write a paper about, it was like a marketing class, but he was going over there to do some programs. So we met up in Florence and took him all around the spots and spent a month and a half just at culinary school, just learning how to cook from an Italian grandma, which everybody should do once in their life.
That's awesome. My best friend is a chef. I do pop-ups with him when he's that kind of stuff. And I'm the beer guy. So once the FinOptimal payout hits, I'm just going to spend all of my money on a restaurant with my best friend. And that's going to be the whole thing. And then I'll be back at square one working as a CPA again once we eventually squander it and John Taffer doesn't save us in time. But that's the goal, man. That's the dream.
I love it.
Work really, really hard just to waste all your money on a passion project with your best friend.
Joey, have you seen Mostly Martha?
No.
It's a cooking movie. I think they may have made an American one, which I haven't seen, but it's a German movie about cooking that I think is you can't miss. It might inspire you.
Oh, I see it here. Okay. Yep. I've got it. Adding it. Is it on Netflix? Hold on. Maybe not. Okay. We can make this happen.
Check it out.
Hannah, give me yours.
I feel like I'm such an uninteresting person. Like, this is so hard. I am just this typical girl that lives in the South that really appreciates college football. I did spend like 30 minutes this morning reading the Time article about Taylor Swift because I do in fact love her and can appreciate tying it back to storytelling. Like, I feel like she is an absolute expert at telling a story through song. So I just love her. I guess.
What's your favorite Taylor Swift song?
There is a right answer.
Hard.
There's a correct answer.
I think maybe the one that comes to mind that I constantly have stuck in my head is All Too Well. The 10-minute version.
I was going to say, is it like the nested version? It's the
10-minute version. I think that is probably my
Taylor's version. Taylor's version. I can't keep up with it.
We're in the South.
Props though. She's reinventing herself every day.
She is.
She's a master.
She's a superstar.
She is. I'm in Tupelo, Mississippi.
Okay. Oh, not that far. Not that far.
What's your college football team then?
I'm in Houston.
Oh, Houston. Yeah. Ole Miss. That's
Eli Manning. So all right, this is a good place to bond.
Mm-hmm.
So my father-in-law was a defensive end at LSU.
Oh,
so I'm guessing that's a rival.
It is a rival.
It is a
rival. Yeah. However, my husband says that if he wasn't an Ole Miss fan, he'd be an LSU fan. And I'm like, I grew up in South Alabama as an Alabama fan. Like, I mean, LSU hate week is very real for us. So I felt like that was a slap in the face, but that's what he says. But it is a rival for Ole Miss.
Well, and that stadium is such a cool place to go. So like my sister-in-law got to go when the University of New Mexico played LSU last year. She got to go to Death Valley for a night game, and it wasn't even a big night game. They knew they were going to beat us by 60. And she was like, it was still the best environment I've ever seen at a college football game.
That's insane. Dope. I wish I had that. Binghamton University in upstate New York has nothing. We have drinking and fog. So
that's the
Grove at Ole Miss.
That's 80% of college,
party.
Right?
Yeah, but you have the sun and football also. So anyway.
There's that.
Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is certainly the most fun I've ever had on a podcast that we've done. For those of us, and I think we could spend a whole nother podcast just talking about FinOptimal. Where can we go to find out more about you and FinOptimal and all of the things that you are doing to optimize accounting? Yeah, go to finoptimal.com, FINOPTIMAL.com. You can find everything about us there. Follow us on LinkedIn. If you think this is fun, you definitely check out our LinkedIn posts. They're just about as serious as we've been on this podcast. Mm-hmm. And don't hesitate to reach out. Accounting firm, company, whoever you are, happy to talk, happy to see what we can do to help you. I would also plug when is this episode releasing? That is a good question. I think it's probably going to be late February, early March, I think is when we're booked out to. So check out our new podcast. We need more often, once a week instead of once every couple of weeks. Yeah, for sure. All right. So I'll plug our new podcast because our old podcast, we sold it. So we have a new podcast. So check out Not Another Accounting Podcast that will be live by the time this airs. No, should we sell our podcast? Like what? How does one do that? Yeah. Like we're not allowed. It was called Not Another Accounting Podcast. Yeah. We're not allowed to talk about it. But our new podcast is Not Another Accounting Podcast. So definitely check that one out when it releases. I love it. No non-compete signed, I see. So there you go. Yeah, awesome. Exactly. Well, thanks so much for being on the show with us. I'm excited for our listeners to join in on the fun and then obviously continue the fun by connecting with y'all outside of the podcast. So thanks for joining us. Thank you. Thanks for having us. It's been great. If you're a young CPA looking to develop in their careers, we're always looking for great people. Visit our website for remote work opportunities with Summit Virtual CFO, or find all our open positions at Anders CPAs and Advisors.